The flickering glow of a television screen has a strange way of making ordinary people feel like extended members of our own families. For over a decade, millions of viewers welcomed a unique cast of characters into their living rooms every single week, watching them chase the elusive American dream through the dusty, padlocked doors of abandoned storage units. Among these larger-than-life personalities, few stood out quite as vividly as Darrell Sheets, a man whose booming voice, sharp intuition, and infectious enthusiasm earned him the affectionate nickname of the Gambler. To the casual observer, he seemed to possess an unbreakable spirit, a seasoned veteran of the high-stakes bidding wars who knew how to weather any storm and uncover hidden treasure where others saw only junk. For years, his triumphs and catchphrases became a staple of modern reality television, creating an image of a man who was always in control, always looking forward to the next big score, and completely immune to the standard pressures of ordinary life. Yet, behind the carefully edited episodes, the bright production lights, and the roaring applause of a dedicated fan base, a far darker and much more silent battle was quietly unfolding in the shadows of reality stardom. The transition from a private citizen to a public figure is a treacherous path that very few are truly prepared to navigate, especially when the very platforms designed to connect us become breeding grounds for relentless hostility. As we begin to peel back the layers of this incredibly complex and heartbreaking narrative, we invite you to journey with us deeper into the untold story behind the cameras. And if you find value in these deep cinematic investigations into the realities of fame, please take a quick moment to subscribe to our channel and join our growing community. The tragic reality is that the public persona we grow to love on television is often just a thin veneer, masking a deeply human vulnerability that remains hidden until it is far too late to intervene or offer a helping hand. In the quiet desert community of Lake Havasu City, Arizona, far removed from the bustling sound stages and the competitive auction grounds of California, Darrell Sheets sought a peaceful sanctuary where he could step away from the relentless demands of the entertainment industry. However, peace would prove to be entirely elusive as a perfect storm of personal anxiety, family conflict, and digital torment began to gather over his final months, gradually eroding the resilience of a man who had spent a lifetime projecting absolute strength. The world of reality television is uniquely cruel in how it exposes individuals to the court of public opinion, where anonymous commentators feel entitled to dissect, judge, and harass human beings as if they were nothing more than fictional characters on a screen. For a seasoned treasure hunter who relied so heavily on his gut instincts and personal pride, the sudden shift into a digital landscape filled with toxic commentary and targeted cyberbullying created a profound sense of isolation that no amount of television success could ever hope to counteract. Neighbors and close associates would later recall that the atmosphere surrounding his desert home had grown increasingly heavy, marked by a palpable sense of tension that seemed entirely at odds with the cheerful, larger-than-life figure who had captivated television audiences for more than a decade. It is a sobering reminder that the modern digital age has created a new kind of psychological battlefield, one where the wounds are entirely invisible to the naked eye but possess a devastating capacity to break even the most hardened individuals. As the spring of the year began to settle over the Arizona landscape, those closest to the reality star began to notice subtle yet deeply concerning changes in his demeanor, a quiet retreat from the vibrant energy that had once defined his entire existence. The vibrant conversations about future discoveries and business ventures were slowly replaced by long periods of heavy silence and an overwhelming sense of exhaustion that seemed to cling to him like an inescapable shadow. This initial chapter of our investigation sets a somber stage, inviting viewers to reflect on the immense weight carried by those who live their lives in the unforgiving glare of the public spotlight, where the line between entertainment and real-life tragedy becomes dangerously blurred. The unfolding mystery of his final days serves as a haunting prelude to a much larger conversation about the hidden costs of fame, the fragile nature of family dynamics under pressure, and the destructive power of words spoken across the digital ether. As we prepare to examine the specific events and the shocking timeline that led up to that fateful April day, we must first understand the profound emotional landscape of a man who felt the walls closing in around him, completely isolated despite being known by millions. The story of the Gambler is not merely a tale of reality television trivia, but a deeply moving human tragedy that demands our utmost attention, respect, and a willingness to look far beyond the edited highlights of a famous life. The heavy silence of the Arizona desert was permanently shattered on the night of April 22nd inside a quiet home in Lake Havasu City, marking the final, tragic conclusion of a downward spiral that had been accelerating behind closed doors for months. To fully comprehend the sheer weight of the tension that filled that house, one must look closely at the harrowing details preserved in the official incident reports of the Lake Havasu City Police Department. Documents that paint a stark and deeply unsettling picture of a reality television star pushed to his absolute psychological limits. According to the detailed testimony of Darrell Sheets' unnamed girlfriend, the final hours of the 67-year-old's life were characterized by a profound and agonizing restlessness that manifested as severe, unbreakable sleep deprivation. For days leading up to the tragedy, Darrell had been locked in a brutal battle with insomnia, his mind seemingly unable to find a moment of peace or respite from an overwhelming onslaught of internal stress that he chose to largely keep to himself, never once mentioning the concepts of self-harm or despair to the woman sharing his life. On that fateful night, as the world outside slept, Darrell was entirely unable to find rest, eventually slipping out of bed in the dark hours of the morning to wander through the quiet hallways of his home like a ghost trapped in his own anxieties. His girlfriend, waking up to the emptiness beside her, followed his path through the house only to discover him standing motionless in the doorway of his home office, a space that had once been a sanctuary for his business dealings but had now become the epicenter of his deepest psychological distress. When she approached him, offering comfort or seeking to understand his profound agitation, Darrell simply looked at her and quietly told her to go back to bed, his voice carrying a heavy, flat finality that gave no immediate indication of the horrific action he was about to commit. Complying with his request, she turned away, but only moments later, the fragile silence of the residence was shattered by the deafening sound of a single, catastrophic gunshot echoing through the rooms, signaling an immediate end to the life of one of reality television's most beloved figures. When emergency responders and detectives rushed to the scene, they entered an environment that was thick with emotional devastation, immediately launching an intensive investigation into the circumstances surrounding the self-inflicted wound to the head that had taken the veteran treasure hunter's life. As forensic investigators meticulously combed through the home office and the surrounding rooms, trying to piece together the exact psychological state of the man who had always seemed so boisterous and resilient on television, they made a critical discovery inside a closet that would provide a chilling window into his final thoughts. Tucked away inside a simple black storage bin, detectives located a handwritten suicide note penned by Darrell himself, a document that would immediately reframe the entire tragedy and expose the true source of the agonizing pressure he had been enduring. The physical nature of the note itself spoke volumes before a single word was even read, with responding officers explicitly noting in their official reports that the handwriting appeared remarkably shaky, uneven, and erratic, serving as a tangible testament to the profound emotional turbulence, fear or anger flowing through Darrell's hand as he held the pen. The text of the note was brief, raw, and completely unfiltered, offering a heartbreaking glimpse into a mind that felt utterly broken by the modern digital world. Summarized by authorities as stating that he simply could not take any more of the relentless Facebook bullying, followed by an explicit, angry curse directed squarely at his anonymous tormentors. This shocking revelation transformed the investigation from a standard sudden death inquiry into a deeply troubling look at the real-world lethality of digital harassment, proving that the digital stones thrown from behind the safety of a computer screen can have fatal consequences in the physical world. Yet, as the Lake Havasu City Police continued their deep dive into the final weeks of the television star's life, they quickly realized that the cyberbullying, while incredibly severe and central to his final note, was operating in tandem with a devastating web of internal family fractures and intense personal drama that had left him emotionally raw. The official police documentation reveals that Darrell had recently been locked in severe, highly charged verbal arguments with his own son, Brandon Sheets, a man who had shared the reality television spotlight alongside his father for years, making their sudden ideological and personal rift all the more painful for the aging patriarch. Following a particularly tense and combative visit with his son just days prior to the suicide, Darrell's girlfriend noted that the larger-than-life figure was left completely shattered, describing him as utterly devastated and sad as hell. An emotional state that was completely alien to the confident character millions of viewers knew. Compounding this profound paternal grief was a toxic layer of financial paranoia and external interference, highlighted by a text message sent from Darrell's daughter-in-law directly to him, which explicitly alleged that his girlfriend was actively stealing money from his accounts. This explosive accusation, whether grounded in any reality or completely fabricated, acted as a psychological incendiary device, creating an atmosphere of total distrust, isolation, and betrayal that made Darrell feel as though every single pillar of support in his life was crumbling simultaneously. The police report directly noted it was completely apparent to everyone in his immediate orbit that Darrell was profoundly sad, deeply upset, and structurally broken because of these incoming text messages, which bombarded his phone and left him with nowhere to turn for unconditional comfort. The electronic device that had once connected him to his fans and his lucrative business had effectively been transformed into a delivery system for psychological torture, forcing him to confront a barrage of digital hostility from strangers on Facebook while simultaneously managing a painful collapse of trust within his own bloodline. The sheer speed with which these multi-layered crises converged upon the 67-year-old star created a claustrophobic environment of despair, rendering him entirely unable to sleep, eat, or process his emotions in a healthy manner, culminating in that final lonely standoff in the doorway of his office. As detectives compiled these heartbreaking interviews and analyzed the digital footprints left behind on Darrell's phone, the true gravity of his hidden suffering began to materialize, exposing a stark contrast between the wealth and success celebrated on television and the deep, impoverished loneliness of his final hours. Every detail uncovered by the Lake Havasu City Police Department seemed to reinforce the tragic reality that a human being can be surrounded by millions of adoring fans across the globe, yet remain completely unprotected from the targeted, localized venom of a few dedicated bullies and the agonizing sting of family discord. The formal conclusion of the investigation by the Lake Havasu City Police Department arrived with a chillingly brief statement that summarized the absolute finality of the situation, noting that the case would be officially closed out because it was ruled a suicide by the medical examiner, adding the heavy words, "nothing further." This concise phrase, preserved in cold public records, stands as a stark contrast to the incredibly vibrant, decades-long journey of a man who helped build a multi-million-dollar entertainment franchise from the ground up, proving that when the cameras stop rolling, the human beings left behind are terrifyingly fragile. To truly understand why the loss of Darrell Sheets resonated so deeply across the landscape of modern popular culture, one must look back at his remarkable rise to prominence. Beginning in the year 2010 when he stepped onto the set of a brand new television experiment called Storage Wars. Alongside a colorful ensemble of aggressive buyers, Darrell quickly established himself as a foundational pillar of the series, drawing on his real-life history as a professional liquidator who had spent over 30 years navigating the gritty, unpredictable world of secondary markets and storage locker auctions long before it was ever deemed worthy of primetime television. His high-stakes strategy, unshakable confidence, and famous catchphrase about the holy grail of storage units transformed him into an instant folk hero for working-class audiences who loved watching an ordinary guy risk his own hard-earned cash on a pure gamble. Over the course of more than 150 episodes spanning across multiple successful seasons, viewers watched Darrell uncover incredible historical artifacts, rare comic book collections, and valuable antique art pieces, celebrating his massive financial victories as if they were their own. This decades-long journey through the heights of reality television fame makes his sudden, tragic exit all the more difficult to comprehend for those who only knew him through the lens of his professional success and his boisterous on-screen confidence. In the immediate wake of his passing, the reality television community was plunged into deep mourning, as co-stars and competitors alike struggled to reconcile the larger-than-life figure they worked with alongside the broken man described in the official police reports. Among those who refused to let the conversation surrounding Darrell's death fade into quiet obscurity was his longtime co-star and on-screen rival, Renee Nezhoda, who utilized her own prominent social media platforms to shine an intense, uncompromising spotlight on the destructive nature of digital harassment. In an emotional, widely viewed video posted to her Instagram account, Nezhoda openly declared that relentless social media bullying had played an undeniably massive role in driving Darrell to the absolute brink of human endurance. revealing that he had been actively posting and pleading for help regarding a specific individual who had been maliciously cyberbullying and tormenting him for an extended period of time. Nezhoda issued a direct public call to action for law enforcement agencies, stating with profound urgency that she truly hoped investigators would look deeply into that individual and ensure that this targeted digital harassment was not simply dismissed or passed over as a minor issue in the wake of the suicide. This public stance by a fellow television personality forced a broader societal conversation about the legal and moral accountability of internet trolls, highlighting how vulnerable public figures can become when they are subjected to coordinated campaigns of digital venom that follow them directly into their private homes through their smart devices. Law enforcement authorities initially took these claims incredibly seriously, with Sergeant Kyle Ridgway explicitly confirming to major media outlets at the time that the extensive cyberbullying allegations were being treated as an active, integral part of the ongoing investigation into the reality star's final days. However, as the legal machinery of the state ground onward, the difficulties of prosecuting anonymous internet harassment became painfully apparent, ultimately culminating in the medical examiner's definitive ruling that Darrell's death was entirely self-inflicted, leaving the digital perpetrators shielded by the immense anonymity of the internet. The devastating trajectory of Darrell Sheets serves as a historic, deeply cautionary tale for the modern entertainment era, illustrating the profound psychological toll that accompanies the transition from an ordinary blue-collar worker to a globally recognized television star overnight. It exposes a systemic flaw in how our society consumes reality entertainment, often forgetting that the individuals on our screens do not possess corporate public relations teams or high-tech security detail to insulate them from the localized, highly personal attacks launched by malicious actors online. Darrell's journey, which began with the simple, honest desire to provide for his family by utilizing his unique treasure hunting skills, ended in a lonely room filled with shaky handwriting and a profound sense of total betrayal by the very world that had once celebrated his unique talents. The tragic juxtaposition of his life, uncovering vast fortunes hidden inside forgotten, locked rooms while simultaneously keeping his own deepest emotional pain locked away from the people who loved him most, remains a haunting memory for his millions of dedicated fans worldwide. As the dust finally settles on this heartbreaking chapter of television history, the legacy of the gambler is permanently preserved in the digital archives of entertainment history. But his true final message is one of profound vulnerability and an urgent plea for greater human empathy across our digital spaces. His tragic end forces us all to look closer at the real-world impact of our words, proving that behind every public persona is a fragile human being who is fighting a battle that we may know absolutely nothing about. If you or a loved one are currently experiencing overwhelming struggles, severe emotional distress, or thoughts of self-harm due to cyberbullying, family conflict, or any of the deeply painful issues raised in this investigation, please remember that you are never truly alone in the dark and that compassionate support is always available to you. You can reach out immediately to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by calling 800-273-8255. Or you can choose to connect discreetly with dedicated crisis counselors by texting the crisis text line directly at 741-741, because no matter how heavy the wall